welcome to our first live session of the MOOC at TU9. First of all, I want to give you some short information about TU9 and a short overview of what is happening in the next 90 minutes. The TU9 is an alliance of leading institutes of technologies in Germany. We are excellent in research and leading the way in teaching, especially in STEM subjects. MOOC at TU9 is a joint project of TU9 universities all over Germany. In our upcoming 9-week course, we want to provide insights into key issues and contents of various engineering. Our course is designed to help you, to help interested people all over the world with their personal orientation towards graduate studies in engineering science in Germany. If you want to gain an overlook or even deeper insights into engineering, you are here and now at the right place. The course is interactive and you have different kinds of opportunities to join us. After every portrait of our TU9 universities, you can ask questions directly to the professor. After that, we give you exercises over the week and you can hand the answers in after or at the end of the week. More details about that later. So welcome to the MOOC at TU9. In our first session today, I want to give you insights into the studies of entrepreneurship and quality and usability at the TU9 universities in Aachen and Berlin. Today, we start with the RWTH Aachen University and with Professor Malte Brettel. First of all, I want to give you a short portrait of him and the RWTH in Aachen.
With its 260 institutes in 9 faculties, RWTH Aachen University is among the leading European scientific and research institutions. Over 40,000 students from more than 120 countries are currently enrolled in over 100 courses of study. The work of the research centers of RWTH Aachen is closely oriented towards the current needs of the industry. This results in numerous patents and startups, and was also the deciding factor for international research institutions such as Microsoft and Ford to be set up in the Aachen region. Professor Malte Brettel is Vice Rector for Business and Industry Relations and Head of the Chair for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and its adjacent Center for Entrepreneurship. He is strongly interested in questions important to innovators and business founders, meaning research topics that are on the intersection of theory and practice. Consequently, he puts strong emphasis on application-oriented and participant-centered teaching approaches, such as case-based discussions, video lectures, or online simulations. Learning techniques that are meant to enable students of RWTH to be experts in technology and become future business leaders.
And now I'm looking forward to talking to him in person. So welcome, Professor Brettel, in our first live session of the MOOC at TU9.
Hi, Mirko. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. And also a warm welcome on behalf of RWTH Aachen, one of these technical universities being part of the TU9. My name is Malte Brettel. I'm happy to be here.
Before we start, so you have some pictures, some information in a short film. So what are you doing exactly? So therefore, let's start with some pictures.
Professor Achim Kampker holds the chair for production management at the RWTH Aachen University and is responsible for Street Scooter GmbH. While living and working in Shanghai, he was nearly run over by an electric scooter silently running down a street. This was the first time he encountered electric mobility, and since then he started to have a passion for electric mobility solutions. By setting up a cooperation between various faculties, he was able to combine theory and practice and build one of its kind electric vehicle at RWTH Aachen University, the so-called street scooter. Here, students do have the opportunity to be part of projects like this by running seminars and labs, working with entrepreneurial teams, as well as writing the thesis with those young companies.
So as we have seen, your work with the students is very practical and interdisciplinary. Therefore, my question, are there any opportunities for interdisciplinary work, for instance, projects across different areas or interdisciplinary topics or for thesis?
Yes, of course. Well, first of all, you've seen my colleague, Professor Kampka, in the short movie we had out here. And he's doing research on the one hand in his field, electric mobility, and on the other hand, he's bringing that research into practice. And to start with the electric mobility, this research combines many faculties all over our university, and it is only possible if you combine this research. For example, production technologies with battery technologies, with all sorts of automotive technologies, in order to put together this so-called street scooter, which we'll see in a couple of minutes in the video. And this is the collaboration we have there, so the interdisciplinary collaboration on the one hand, and on the other hand, now the business faculty is coming into place, because we are bringing this into practice, or we help bringing this into practice. And within the next minutes, I'd like to go further into that, how we do that collaboration, how we do foster entrepreneurship here. I'm the entrepreneurship guy at RWTH with our principles of research. So business research comes into helping engineers, natural scientists, to bring also their collaborative interdisciplinary research forward, and this is how we work together. So it is, you might really call it a crazy quilt. It's many people to come in together, solving problems from the first principle out into the market, and this is what Aachen is about.
And so let's talk about a bit the relevance of entrepreneurship, and therefore you have another film for us about the success of the street scooter and how does it work, and or how did it work with the theoretical stuff on the other, on the one hand, and the practical on the other.
For sure.
Street scooter is being officially evaluated by Deutsche Post in a large-scale field test and has proven its durability and engineering excellence in its field. The ecosystem of RWTH Aachen University combines first-class research and leading industry know-how to push innovation in high-tech products. RWTH Aachen University prepares students and researchers to find answers to the global challenges. This is done not only in our teaching, but also by allowing to experience innovation and entrepreneurship. The street scooter is such an answer to the global challenge, how we can reduce urban CO2 pollution.
So about seeing about what we have seen, what distinguished graduates of RWTH, what skills and knowledge do you focus on in your curriculum?
Well, first of all, at RWTH, as in other technical universities, students get the very basic principles of these technologies. So they get a very background in technology, in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and all those fields. However, starting really in the undergraduate studies, they are able to take part in these research projects we've just seen, like the street scooter, which started as a research project because you first of all have to do research on this vehicle to bring that forward. And it is undergrad students and graduate students that can take part in various programs in exploratory spaces, to get a better sense of what is happening. And this brings them a more practice-oriented approach to what the basic principles they've seen in their studies, how to apply them in the practical world. Going on with that, also in the graduate studies, they get a better insight into those, and they also get projects where they can work together with the researchers. And besides that, they get soft skill courses in order to prepare them to work with those projects, but also bring those into practice, as we've seen in the street scooter. Because at the very end, they can also start working in projects like Street Scooter, which is a really practical company, and gain their first practical experience really during their studies. So if you ask what distinguishes our students, our graduates, first of all, they get a very profound basic knowledge of the engineering fields. But in addition to that, they learn to apply these fields, they get the necessary soft skills, and they get all the like entrepreneurial background that helps them applying that. Because if we look a little bit at the entrepreneurship studies at this field in our university, entrepreneurship is basically dealing with uncertainty. And dealing with uncertainty means you get a problem where you don't know what the solution could be, and we prepare our students in order to deal with that a little better. And I think we can focus on that a little more.
Okay, and so when I as I heard in your words, that sounds to me that they are very they get very practical usage. They have a network with firms where they can work after the graduate or after the master program. So how do you see the chances for your graduates?
Well, first of all, they get a profound basic knowledge in the field. That's very important, because they can't apply technologies if they don't know what the technology is. So they go very deep in the mechanical engineering studies, for example. But exactly what you mentioned, we have a very large network of practical companies, of industries working together with us. And this really starts during the studies of the students. So on the one hand, students can get a better insight into the studies, into the research, into the high-class research, in order to take part in the research projects. On the other hand, they can always try to apply that in a practical context by working together with the companies we do have relations with, by doing these internships, and also by founding their own companies, because this is also what we help the students. So again, what distinguishes our students is that they really learn to apply what they learn in their studies, and they're a little better prepared for working in the industry. And so the chances for our graduates are very, very high in order to get a job. Every student who finishes basically the exam here at RWTH, if he takes care about that, can have a job offer before he finishes.
That sounds very good to me. Are there any challenges for them after finishing in the studies at Aachen?
Well, I think there are always the same challenges for engineers in their practical lives. I mean, if you go to work as an engineer, even if you're well prepared because you've worked in internships, you have the challenge that first of all you have to apply your engineering knowledge, which is the basis what you learned in your university. However, when it comes pursuing your career, and when you had done that like 5 or 7 years, you will learn that engineering knowledge is one part of your job, but other parts like soft skills, business administration knowledge, and so on, get more and more important. And especially those students who are really good in engineering have problems to adapt to that situation. So this is why we take care for some soft skill courses. However, if you look at a curriculum, there's always the need for more, and we do not really have the time for that.
Yes, it's just only 2 years in the master studies. So what
Exactly.
can you what can you say to the students? What can they do in their free time after the practical courses, after the theoretical courses? What do you think? What do they have to do to be better on the market after the master degree?
Well, in their free time, they have various opportunities in Aachen. besides sports and all these things, which people probably should do too, we have this network of companies here. We have, we also build entrepreneurial companies, about 40 out of university every year. So there's a good chance to start something by yourself, and many students do that during their studies. So students have various possibilities to gain either experience in companies, really hands-on experience, or we have lots of initiatives also around their studies, where students, for example, take technologies out of Aachen University and try to bring them in third world countries in order to help develop these countries, which is also a very interesting practical insight on a very different level. However, that helps them basically adapting their knowledge, what they learned, into some new contexts, and this is what I think is important.
Thank you very much. So we have a question from the audience, and they want to know if there are any firms or any firms founded by students in Aachen.
Well, there's lots of firms founded by students. This is a very good question in that way, because most of the firms still come out of research, and in most cases it's PhD students who work on a specific subject for a couple of years, and later on they finish their PhD and start their own business. However, we always have students that start their businesses, and there's famous examples, or some examples for that. Tamaika is a very local example, which is the car-sharing company which came out of Aachen University, founded by students. And we foster that. We have, for example, a 3-day startup workshop, which they have in Austin, Texas, which they have in China, for example. We have that in Aachen too. And we let students think about starting their business within 3 days. And it's always interesting to see that companies come out of these initiatives. And we have lots of entrepreneurship courses where we always try to let people develop their own idea, let them pitch in front of class, let them work on their business plans, and then let them hand in the business plans to contests, local and international contests, for example, the Rice Business Plan competition. And there you get more feedback, you get good feedback, and maybe also get funding in those, and then you start your business as a business student, out of a business plan competition, as a student. We're not saying please stop your studies in order to start your business, which many entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, did. However, if you have the chance to do that, we help you building your business as a student.
And therefore, we have another question from the audience. Do you have any success rates? How often about your students, about your graduates?
You mean in terms of the success rate in their studies?
No. After being a graduate and then on the market, so finding a job. Do you have any rates for us?
Oh, on the job market, you mean unemployment?
Yes.
We don't have any rates for that. Sorry about that. But from all the studies, students I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them, nobody's without a job after a certain amount of time. And most students I know have a job before they finish their exams.
What do you think? Is it so? This question for myself. What do you think? Is it better to start your own business if you have a good idea, or do you think go into a big, huge firm to start the career?
Well, it really depends on yourself, I think. And I think the main thing to answer this question, and we'll see that in the exercise too, is are you able to cope with uncertainty? We can teach how to cope with uncertainty, how to deal with uncertainty to some extent. However, if you don't like uncertainty to take over your life, if you want a life where you can plan the next day, the next 10 days, the next 10 weeks and 10 months, building your own business might be a big challenge for yourself. So the first question is really about yourself, trying to get an idea whether you might be able to cope with uncertainty or not. And if you're able to do that, I think we can teach everyone in entrepreneurship, and then it's always a great experience to start your own business. I started a couple businesses by myself. I always loved the experience. I think it was to some extent the best days of my life when I was able to do my business on my own for myself. However, it really depends on the personality, and there's people who don't like the uncertainty and they should go in large corporations. And the engineers are desperately needed there, so there's chances on both sides.
Okay, there's another question from the audience. Do you know if your students doing more PhD studies or going on the into firms on the markets, on the job market and starting their business?
Oh, honestly, there's lots of students who start their PhD in Aachen because we have these large institutes, and these institutes doing so many interesting things like street scooter, and they need extensive research to build a street scooter, so they need these PhD students in there. So there's lots of students to go into doing a PhD. However, as I said before, the PhD for them is in many cases a very, very good basis for founding the business. When I look at the entrepreneurs I've seen in my entrepreneurship center, there's a lot of PhD students who started the business, and a lot of successful PhD students starting a successful business. So I think this is not contradictory. If you have the chance to start your business as an undergrad student, if you have a great idea, if you're Mark Zuckerberg and you've had the idea of Facebook, you might want to do it. You probably should do that. But if you don't, you can go on during your studies, and within the PhD, you get a profound knowledge of a very, very certain field, and in this field, you might also find a problem for the outside world, which is the basis for starting an own business. So it's not contradictory. You can do it during the whole time being at Aachen University, and the Entrepreneurship Center is there for everyone.
And we have another question. How do you teach the students to think, in your kind of way, being a student of entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurship thinking? What do you do to create that thinking in the students' brain? Okay.
Well, that's a great question because I actually love it, and it's also part of the exercise, which we'll see in a minute. To a certain degree, you have to look at your personality. Coping with uncertainty might be difficult because some of the decisions you don't know the outcome. However, we really believe in that you can teach entrepreneurial thinking and acting, which we call effectuation. An effectuation, which is a theory that has become popular in entrepreneurship during the last, let's say 10 years. The first seminal article was 12 years ago. In the last 10 years, people started to understand how entrepreneurs cope with uncertainty. They have a different way of doing that, which I can show you in a minute in the exercise. And we teach that way, and we let people practice that way. So we have the students learn how to do that, and by that they learn how to think like an entrepreneur, which not only helps you to build your own business. You don't need to do that, but it also helps you to pursue your career. Because if you look at your career and ask the people, what do you want to be in 10 years? Nobody can really be for sure. You can't plan your career in that way. Well, I wasn't able to plan that. But if you have ways to keep your career under control, that's the best you can do. And this is what you can teach, and this is what we believe is the effectual way, this entrepreneurial way of thinking and acting.
So therefore, thank you very much. So let's see the exercise, or let's have a look at the exercise. But before, thank you very much, Professor Brettel in Aachen, for the interview, and have a successful day.
Thank you very much. Have fun.
And now we will see, or we have a look
Let's go over to the first assignment, and before we do this, I'd like to give you an introduction to effectuation, which is the entrepreneurial way of thinking and acting that you as a student can use, that professors can use, that people in entrepreneurial company, established companies can use to be more entrepreneurial, more efficient, more effective in what they do. Have you ever asked yourself why in some situations startups are more successful than established companies? Take the example of Skype versus Siemens. Both companies, especially Siemens, had all the technologies to realize voice over IP, so telephoning in the internet. However, it was Skype, a startup, who basically made the race and is, if you look at the number of minutes, the biggest telephone company in the world right now. Why hasn't this been Siemens? And they had the technologies. And the other example is the street scooter. Why is it possible at RWTH Aachen University that a professor, a single professor with the help of other professors, comes up with a street scooter, with an electric vehicle? And there's so many established companies, automotive companies, that can also do the same thing. Well, part of that, the reason why this is possible is effectuation, the entrepreneurial way of thinking and acting, which makes you realizing those things with very, very little means. And I'd like to give you an introduction into that, and the assignment is also about this. So let's start first of all with the basis. The basis is this lady. This lady, a very entrepreneurial personality, she asked herself when coming to the US, starting her PhD, if expert entrepreneurs have a different way of solving problems. Do they deal with risks and returns, especially in highly uncertain situations, differently than non-expert entrepreneurs, people in established companies? And those highly uncertain situations are very typical for street scooter and also for voice over IP, because nobody knew whether this is possible, the technology will have a breakthrough and all this stuff. And what she did, she examined 27 expert entrepreneurs in form of think aloud experiment, and she basically found out as a result that they have a different approach to solving problems, the expert entrepreneurs. And what is the different approach? So first of all, let's look at the approach you learn in a business school, and which is true for many situations, which you should use for many situations. The first thing you do is you build your goals, and then you think about the process to achieve the goals, and then you collect the means, and this is how you do your plan. Question: if you can't predict, if you can't build a goal, what do you do then? You can't plan if you can't predict, so you can't define goals. So the non-entrepreneurial way, the established way in normal settings, is you define goals. Based on goals, you look at the process and the means, you look at expected returns and so on. This is totally right for all of the established companies. However, in those uncertain situations, like street scooter, was it not possible to predict the future of electric mobility? Expert entrepreneurs have a different approach because they say we can't predict, so we don't predict, we do it differently. And what's their different approach? Basically, the different approach is they start with their means. They start with their person, with the question, who am I, what do I know, and whom do I know? So Achim Kamka's starting point was exactly that. And then he asked himself, what can I do with who I am, what I know, and whom I know? And he could do certain things. However, to go further, to build an electric vehicle, he had to approach others, and with these others, he had to craft so-called stakeholder commitments. So taking more means and getting more new goals in order to build the street scooter, in order to create his company and also create the market he has created. So this is basically a cycle which you go through in several ways. And what you do is you always have a starting point. This is your situation right now. Then you think about what you can do in this situation. You take others in your boat, so to say, and you have a new output. And by doing that stepwise, you don't need to predict your future, but you create the future. And this is the typical process entrepreneurs go. So they start with the input, then they can go a certain process, and this is the result is they create an output. They don't predict, they create the output. And in highly uncertain situations, this is by far the better way to act, because you control the future and you design your own future for your own success. So what is the difference to established processes? Let's take 4 logic dimensions and compare the causal logic, so the logic where you predict the goal and so on, to the effectual logic, the action-based approach. What's the starting point again? The starting point is, in the causal logic, it's your goals. It is the output. You predict the output. The starting point in the effectual logic are your own means, is where you are. What are you able to do at this point of time? The second, the investment decision, is now the expected returns. If I would like to reach the output, what kind of process do I need? What's my input? And what is my return, calculating what I have to put in and comparing that to what's the output is. In the effectual way, you commit a limit. You say, okay, what am I willing to lose, which is your affordable loss, in the next step, and how far do I get doing that? Which is a different approach, and exactly this is why entrepreneurs are more efficient in coping with uncertainty, because they only commit certain limits and they look how far they got, and if they don't get further, they stop earlier. Next step is the process, the next logic dimension. If you can predict, you should predict, you plan, you do research for your plans, and you execute your plans. In the effectual logic, you basically craft stakeholder commitments. So you try to commit more and more stakeholders into your, we call it crazy quilt. A quilt having more than, in the case of street quilt, 40 companies bringing their expertise into the street scooter. And the last one is, how do you deal with contingencies? Well, if you made your plan, you'd like to stick to your plan, so you try to avoid surprises. On the other hand, in the effectual logic, you leverage the contingencies. If something happens on your way, you try to put it into your crazy quilt and use it for your advantage. And this is again why entrepreneurs could be more successful. But I'm always talking about entrepreneurs. This process, this effectual process, really holds true for many people, for all of us in uncertain situations. In uncertain situations, it's better to solve the situation stepwise than to try to predict what could happen in the future, because this is just not possible. So let's look at some instruments you can use to go the effectual process. One of the first and important instrument is to analyze yourself, analyze your skills, your knowledge, as well as the settings in which you would like to use your skills and knowledge. So what you do if you do that first step of effectuation, you first of all access your own means in terms of understanding your strengths and understanding what you're good at. Then the second step is reflecting those means and trying to understand the context in which you used your strengths. Because this is probably the best context also in the future to use your strengths. And you also ask yourself, which skills and knowledge were needed in these situations in order to have a sense for potential stakeholders. You should commit into your crazy quilt in order to be more successful. And when you've done that, the third step is now you transfer your means to the new situation, to the situation you'd like to create, to the situation of creating a street scooter, to the situation of creating a telephone company like Skype or other entrepreneurial situations. In which context do you want to apply the skills and knowledge, and which is the closest context for me to use my skills and knowledge in order to be good at what you're doing in terms of like combining the best resource you have for the best result, potential result in the future. This also gives you a hint for skills and knowledge lacking in that situation, which is the second step in order to go to craft stakeholder commitments. So that's the first instrument, and the next instrument exactly about partnerships, about crafting stakeholder commitments. Because if you have a sense for the strengths and the knowledge you need in your as your next step in your crazy quilt, you might think about your partnerships. You might think about this crazy quilt. Is it more a string quartet? Actually, this is not a string quartet. This is a couple more musicians. Or a jam session. This is also not a jam session. This is obviously more a guitar round. However, did you really put it together and have like notes they play at, or do they just do a jam session, play whatever they think that comes into their mind? However, also a jam session is to some extent under control of some leader, or at least a piece they'd like to do together. So what is the partnership you would like to create? This is the main question you're trying to answer. And why do you need to commit partners? What is the advantage of that? As I said before, it's the skills and the knowledge. It is new ideas you get into your quilt. It's resources. It is growth potential, because they can bring in a lot more where we can grow with them, and without you can't grow that much. It's also a higher focus on your own expertise. You remember, you ask yourself about your expertise and what is lacking, and this is what stakeholders have to bring in. And also you share risks and losses. Especially if you're an entrepreneur without means, it is important to be able to have someone else committing some resources, which also means you can share risks and losses because you don't lose everything on your own. So that's the second step, crafting stakeholder commitments, putting more people into that quilt. And the last step is now thinking about how can I turn contingencies into new opportunities. So if something happens on the way, how can I make this an advantage for my company, for the market I'd like to create? And there's a couple examples for that. The first one is a guest in a restaurant complaining about the fried potatoes because he said they are too thick. I'd like to have smaller, thinner fried potatoes. And that was basically the starting point of chips. So a great invention. Just by chance, a contingency because someone was complaining. Use that for your advantage. Second example, Percy Spencer. He had some chocolate in his pocket and he found out the chocolate melted because he was working close to a radar unit. And I thought, oh, how can I use radar to melt chocolate or to cook other things? And that was the beginning of the microwave. Again, by chance. A contingency you probably didn't like because the chocolate melted and maybe it was all dirty afterwards. But the positive thing was he got this idea. And the last example, many people know that example. Pfizer was working on a new drug that should cure heart diseases. It didn't really work out. However, it became very popular as Viagra and made Pfizer very, very successful at the very end. So also contingency, which could have been considered very negative because the initial plan didn't work out, but they turned it into something very positive for the whole company. And this is what you also should do. And what is the best way to do that? Well, if you try not to avoid surprises, and this is avoiding surprises. If you want to go from A to B and you block everything out, this means you avoid surprises. In case of Pfizer, they just would have thrown away the blue pill, which would have been a big mistake. And the other thing is, what you could do is you go not from A to B, but then you go from A to Y. So you use Viagra in order to sell it to other people instead of curing heart disease. So how do you do that? In these situations, just think about how you can turn the contingency into an advantage. There's also instruments for that, but maybe we should right now go over to look at your homework, at your first task. Your first task is closely associated to what I just told you, the effectual way of thinking and acting, and we'd like to start with this great example from RWTH Aachen University, the street scooter, and Achim Kamper. This is him. And the first question is, how did the whole thing start? So take the example of street scooter and analyze how its founder, Achim Kamper, a professor here, used his means to start the company. So describe each of the following questions in one sentence. Who is he? What does he know? Whom does he know? The main thing what you could do right now is do an internet search, try to understand him, his life, and so on, and try to get a sense for that situation. This is probably what you can do, and then you might understand why he was the one to build a street scooter. Next question is about partnerships. Who did help to succeed? It is very difficult if you should do that with the street scooter example because it's not all disclosed. Then it's easier to do that with another service or product. So please find one of service or product which you'd like to take that is delivered based on partnerships. So partnership, an important part in delivering this product or service. Those partners can be individuals or companies. Name the partners, describe their role in delivering the service and product, and by doing that, try to get an understanding why this product or service is possible only because of the partners, which then is a very, very good stakeholder commitment in that sense. So that's the second question, and the last question is about the contingencies, turning contingencies into opportunities. I gave you 3 examples, the chips, the microwave, and Viagra. So your task is to basically find more. So find 3 contingencies that individuals or companies have turned into new opportunities. Name the person, or if it's an individual or the company, who came across the contingency and describe how the discovery occurred. And name the product they created or service they created. So don't use the one in the videos, try to think about others. And this is going to be probably very, very lively also for us to see which kind of examples you find. So I'm really looking forward to your solutions. Thank you very much.
The exercises for our first part for the RWTH in Aachen from Professor Brettel. If you have any questions about that, you can write them in the forum and you get answers for it. So let's start with our second part, and before we switch to Berlin, a short film, a short portrait of him and his own university.
At the Quality and Usability Lab, we work on the interaction between humans and technology. That is, how humans perceive media and how they interact with IT. Students at our field of studies can expect that they do not only learn about the technology, but that they also learn how humans interact. And this knowledge brings, of course, the possibility to optimize products. The products we are developing are usually developed in groups and teams of interdisciplinary people. And it is, of course, advantageous if these people have different cultural backgrounds, because then these backgrounds can be taken into account if we address the human aspect of it. One of the topics we are working on at the Quality and Usability Lab is the perception of media. That is, we try to understand how humans perceive, for example, audio signals, which are reproduced by wavefield synthesis over headphones. Another topic we are working on is human interaction, for example, with mobile apps or with other technology involved in a smart home environment. We try to understand humans by logging what they do with systems and then predict how systems should adapt to their behavior. Learning requires activation, and in order to activate you as a student, we provide not only media material, but we also ask you to participate in exercise and projects which are taught here on campus. Students graduating from human-computer interaction and media technology are special because they have a broader perspective. They know not only about the technology, but also how humans perceive and use it. And this brings them lots of job opportunities, not only in industry, but also to form their own startup. And Berlin is an excellent location for building a startup.
Yeah, we have seen some a short portrait of Professor Sebastian Möller and his university in Berlin. Therefore, I'm looking forward to switching to Berlin. Welcome, Professor Sebastian Möller.
Welcome, Mirko. Thank you very much, and welcome all the students of the course.
Nice to have you in the live session in the MOOC at TU9. You're a professor for quality and usability. Can you explain us or give us some more detail what it is and why is it interesting for engineers?
But engineers mainly care about technology. They are interested in how the technology works and to build new technology. And many of the technologies we are building, or engineers in general are building, are meant to be used by humans. So if we want to find out how this technology can be done in a better way, in an optimal way, we have to understand how humans work. That is, we have to investigate the perception, their interaction behavior with the technology, and so on. And this human aspect of technology, I think, is something which is very interesting for students, because humans are, as humans, normally interested in human beings, and they should be interested in also understanding how humans work, how they perceive, how they interact, and so on. So I think this human aspect is something which is very important. Now, to your second part of the question, the Quality and Usability Lab, that's actually something, some particular topic we are interested in, which relates to both the perception of digital media and the interaction of humans with technology. Quality has been defined as the result of a perception process and a judgment process. So it's something which cannot be measured in a technical way, but which requires human beings to be active. And usability is the fact which describes how well humans are able to interact with technology. And both concepts are essential if you want to design optimum technology. And this is why the Quality and Usability Lab is an integral part of a technical university, in this case the Faculty for Computer Science and Electrical Engineering.
You said that the interaction between human beings and machines are getting more and more important, and also in the upcoming years. So how do the students feel that in their everyday student life at your university?
But we are now in a good example of this, because the Hangout is something, of course, which is based on technology, and we try to convey some information using this technology. And this is done also in a standard way by students. So we offer a lot of material for e-learning in order to cater for the different needs of students. Students do not learn in this all in the same way, but they have, of course, characteristic preferences and so on. So in order to optimally teach and to make that students optimally learn, we have to provide them with different media and with different types of technologies. We started by providing material through our online systems, but then we found out that people, they would like to also repeat some of the courses, so we made video recordings of the courses. Then we found out that just watching videos might be a little bit boring, so we wanted to activate students. We filled in questionnaires and quizzes, which we do partially online during our courses, and partially we do that in the weeks between. And then we provided even more material, providing audio and video examples and so on. So all that is meant to cater optimally so that students can take optimum profit of what is offered at TU Berlin.
How successful is that? That you give the chances for the students?
Yeah, actually we are trying to find out. So we are carrying out student projects at the moment where we log the behavior of other students, of course in a pseudonymized way, so we restrict the privacy, of course, but we want to find out how the usage of the different online media and of the online material we provide, how this affects the success in terms of learning outcomes, in terms of success in the exams. And this is an ongoing study. And if you come here to TU Berlin in part of a course, then you might be part of that study as well.
Okay, thank you. You are part of the Telecom Innovation Labs. How do you cooperate with them and with the industry?
Well, that's a very specific construction we have here in Berlin. It's one example of a public-private partnership, which is something I think you can find at different universities of TU9. In this case of the Telecom Innovation Labs, there was a very successful one because there were common interests between the university and the industry. The industry in this case, the major German telecom provider, they are interested in putting innovations into their products. And these innovations, of course, require a lot of fundamental science to be carried out before. So we try to bridge this gap between the basic science and the applied science and the usage of the scientific results in terms of new products and services by cooperating really on campus in the same premises. So we are sitting together with telecom colleagues, students who are working here. They work equally well with the telecom colleagues as well as with the university colleagues. Deutsche Telekom pays for a couple of endowed chairs at TU Berlin and also at the neighboring University of Arts. And so this all creates an atmosphere of open innovation, which is something very important for a university, that you can publish the results, that you increase the knowledge and not only provide some advantage for some specific industry provider.
Do you have any other projects at the TU Berlin?
Yes, of course. We have, of course, other projects either with other chairs at TU Berlin or which are funded on a national or European level with universities on, even worldwide. We have that on all levels. So we, as a student, may take profit of that, but also we have PhD students who are under joint supervision, for example, with the University in Australia. And there are a couple of other offers we have where students can directly take profit of a mixed industrial scientific environment. And this even is reflected in student projects we offer, for example, for bachelor and master thesis. These are very frequently topics which are related to some application example, which might be of university and industrial interest.
That sounds to me, a lot of cooperations between the TU Berlin and the industry. How do you think are the chances for graduates at TU Berlin?
I think the chances are excellent. Not only that Berlin is a very vibrant place where lots of technological companies are either being built as startups or where they are heading to in order to find competent people. And we here in Berlin are, of course, in that the epicenter. And on the other hand, I think that you get a very good basic scientific education at this technical university, which enables you to do lots of jobs afterwards. We have, apart from the standard courses in electrical engineering and computer science, we have created something which is in between, which is a course on computer engineering. We have recently created a new course on media informatics, on digital media, which is now started. And we have special courses also in collaboration with other universities. We are part of the EIT, which is the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. And in the frame of this institution, we are offering specific master courses for international students. So they spend 1 year at another university, be it in Helsinki or at KTH in Stockholm or at another university in France, for example, and then they come for their second year here. And in Berlin, they are studying multimodal interaction, they are studying human-computer interaction, they are doing their final year project here, either together with the industry or in collaboration, for example, in an institution like telecom laboratories. And I think that gives them the necessary breadth and the necessary depth in order to compete on an international and globalized education market.
That sounds very good to me as well. Are there any challenges for them being a graduate at TU Berlin on the market, on the job market?
Well, of course, you have the usual challenges which an engineer has to face. So, engineering studies are not simple, and especially if you go to one of the big technical universities in Germany, this is something which requires lots of effort in order to succeed with the studies. Apart from that, I think that the graduates from our courses, they really easily find jobs either in big industrial players, and these public-private partnerships, of course, they help also to find jobs, but also in building their own startup, and especially digital media and human-computer interaction. These are topics which are particularly tailored for building your own startup because you don't need lots of equipment. You can start with a simple app or something like that.
Are there more startups after graduate at TU Berlin, or are they going more students or more graduates into big players?
I don't know about the percentages, but I know that Berlin and the Technical University in Berlin, they do a lot in order to support people who want to build their startup. So there are specific programs, funding programs, where you can get, for example, 1 year paid for 1 or 2 people to build your startup. They support you with creating business plans. They support you by finding simple things like infrastructure, housing, and so on. All that is done in order to make startups competitive. Then they try to increase their communication. They try, for example, there is a long night of startups which is built here, and I think there's lots of things on offer. Of course, this doesn't take the requirement from the person who wants to do the startup to behave in a good way so that he's successful. But this is in the nature of startups, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So now you have the chance to ask questions to Professor Möller, to give us them, to hand them in. And before I will ask them, or I will give the questions to Professor Möller, we will see the exercises, or we have a look at the exercises for the week from Professor Möller at the TU Berlin.
Okay, so I think I should explain a little bit about the background of this exercise. And the background of this exercise is to create technology products in terms of little apps. You know, smartphones. There are lots of little application programs that help you in your daily life. And this is a particularly well-suited application which illustrates what we understand by usability engineering and the usability engineering lifecycle. The usability engineering lifecycle is a process which defines how the user can be taken into account in the development process of a new application or service. We can take the requirements of the user into account even before a system is thought of, and we take that into account until it is lastly deployed and until it's on the market. So the first thing would be that we analyze. We analyze the user, we analyze the requirements of the user, we analyze system abilities, we analyze the context of use of where this particular application or service might be used in. We then have to come up with proposals for designing an application. That could be a parallel design where different designers work in parallel in order to come to competing solutions for design, or it could be iterative design where one solution of design is further find out in order to come to something which can directly be put first then into a prototype and then into the final product. The prototype is something we want to address in the weekly task we have, and I will present you a method for doing it in a very modern, very sophisticated way. But then let's first talk about what we do with the products afterwards. Products can be used in two different ways. First, they can be used by experts, by usability experts, in order to test interaction behavior. So a usability expert could go through proposals of designs in terms of prototypes and could see whether the user would follow this design, would follow an interaction, would be able to understand the interface. And secondly, we carry out user tests with real users in a laboratory environment or even in a field test environment. These tests are carried out with the prototypes, and so the prototypes need to have a certain functionality. And the question actually is of how to create functionality inside a prototype. And then you have to implement this prototype. You come up with the first version, you test this version, you try to collect feedback from the field, which means that you, for example, you observe logging, you observe user behavior by logging interactions. You ask for people who promote this product, you ask for trainers, you even study selling numbers and so on, and this gives you further feedback on how to improve the design of your product or service. So in this usability engineering lifecycle, we would like to address the prototyping phase. How is prototyping done? If you consider a mobile app, an application on a smartphone, this would be something where you have first designed the graphical user interface and then provide some functionality to this interface. A designer would typically take a piece of paper, and this process is well known as paper prototyping, and it has a couple of advantages because drawing something on a piece of paper is something which runs very quickly. It leaves you completely open with your ideas, so there are no formalisms to follow, so you can really design something innovative. The prototype in paper form also has the advantage that it is abstract. It's not a fully blown vibrant, colorful, shiny version of the interface, but it's a prototype in terms of a graphics. And this graphics can be changed very quickly, and people put their own impression, put their own ideas into these graphics, and that is what is then further detailed out at later stages of this process. Unfortunately, of course, paper has some disadvantage because it's not interactive. You draw something on it, but you cannot press a button on a paper, or at least nothing would happen. So people have come up with some solutions in order to overcome these problems by having a kind of wizard who assists a user or an expert in using these paper prototypes. But this is not an ideal solution. So what we tried to develop is a method for blended prototyping. That is a mixture of an analog paper prototype and a digital prototype. And this blended prototyping allows you to combine the advantages of paper prototypes with the advantages of a digital implementation. Digital implementation, that's what we want to have at the end, but at the beginning it should be something very abstract, and this blended prototyping supports both processes. I think we have prepared a little film clip which shows the technology of this blended prototyping.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Beer. I work for the TU Berlin in the QU lab of Sebastian Möller, and I'm here to present you my prototyping table, which consists of the following components: a video projector, a high-resolution photo camera, and a video camera, which is just a webcam, and a table. You design your prototypes on regular paper sheets. Our idea today is to design a push-up training app. So far we are happy with our first screen design here. Now we come up with a second one. In the second screen we ask the user whether he feels great today. So it's like, today I feel like Hercules. So far we are really happy with the design of our first two screens. Now we want to ask the system to take a picture of them. To control the tabletop application here, we use a mobile device like this, which has an app, which I'll just start now. And I use the device to trigger the picture process. For this I select the screen with the device. The images are now projected on the paper sheets, and if I substitute this one with an empty one, we see the drawing as a projection on the paper. These big paper sheets are great because you have much space to design your prototype. However, we use the small screens to gain a better overview. Here we see an overview of the 4 screens that we created so far. We cheated a bit. We use our mobile device again to define user controls on the paper prototype. Here we define a button, which is then displayed on the paper as well. I do this for the other screens as well. Now we use the device to create linkage passes of the button. For this we scan our screen again, and as we can see here now, this green line displays the path the prototype will follow. We can see the prototype flow in a storyboard-like view now here on the screen. Okay? So now we can test the app on the mobile device. We see our sketches here, and they behave as we planned. To pop up the interface behavior, we can load the code on the computer, which is a native Java code. And you can program some additional behavior really easy.
Kein Ton mehr. Ich bin weg. Ich höre nichts mehr. Ich habe keine Frage. Ich muss die Frage wiederholen.
So there some small complication about the video. So therefore, no problem. We have we can switch to Berlin in person and have Professor Möller, who can give us the last infos about the exercise of the week.
Yes. So if you have seen the video, you have seen the functionality of this blended prototype. We would like to ask you to build your own app. And for this purpose, of course, we cannot ask you to implement a fully blown app, but we want to want you to make the screen designs and even provide some functionality for the screen designs. So we asked you to provide an app which has up to 5 screens of the size you have seen in the video from Benjamin. And these screens can now be filled with normal paper and pencil and whatever you like to use in order to fill these screens with some very nice drawings. Of course, it should be only nice, but it should be something meaningful. And for this purpose, we have given you 2 types of tasks. The first one is to build an app which allows you to meet with students, with other students, in order to do, for example, joint exercise. This is something which is a typical problem on the campus. You might want to meet with someone, but you don't know exactly where that person is. So you send him a short message and say, I would like to go to the student restaurant. Which one would you go to? And so on. So you're open in the frame of this functionality to design 5 screens and to provide us with some information about how these screens are linked through buttons. For example, you press one button and then go to the next screen, or something else which you know from standard apps. The second one is an app which might also be helpful for you, which helps you to focus on particular tasks. So we want you to implement a specific task list which reminds you of the important tasks so that you do not waste your time with something which is not important. So for either of them, we ask you to build up to 5 screens and to upload these screens in the electronic forum. And we have provided some templates for this. We ask you to upload it until Wednesday evening. We will close that, and then there will be a voting procedure on Thursday. And on Thursday, we ask you to have a look at as many as possible of the submissions we got and to rank them so that we have a winner at the end of Thursday. And with this winner, we will do the full implementation. So you will see again on Friday Benjamin and another colleague who will do the implementation of your prototype if you are the winner of this exercise. That's in a nutshell what you have to do, and there's a more detailed instruction, of course, in the web.
I'm so excited that I think I will do it as well, and will hand in an answer or an app for meeting at the TU Berlin. So do I have to be in Berlin, or that I know where I can meet other students for the exercise?
No, of course not. It could be an app which could be used everywhere, at least at the places of TU9, so everywhere in Germany. But we have a couple of apps developed in the past, and we developed an app, more in-depth app for students at our campus, where they can also find out about courses, and they have more information about the culture program around and so on. So this is something which is anyhow part of student life, and you now have the chance to develop your own app, and if it's so successful, perhaps to integrate it, and then it might be used by 40,000 students here on campus.
Perfect, absolutely perfect. Then I have now some questions from the audience. Professor Möller, what are the basic entry requirements for the digital media and HCI at TU Berlin?
If you want to enter on the master level, that's what I assume here, we of course ask you to have a bachelor degree in one of the related disciplines. So it could be either electrical engineering, it could be computer science, it could be computer engineering or something related. And this is of course a technical requirement. So we ask people to have a technical background with solid mathematics and so on. If you miss some of these, then either you might switch to a slightly different discipline, or you might have the possibility to do, follow-up courses so that you can compete with the others. This is at least the requirement on the master level, and of course on the bachelor level, that's the usual requirements you need to enter university anyhow.
Thank you. We talked before the exercise. We talked a bit about founding a startup or working for a big player. What do you think? The question is as follows. Working for a startup will keep us with more and versatile knowledge than working in a structured company. What do you think about that? Or what is your opinion about it?
I'm not so sure that that's really true, because I think even in big companies you can be versatile. Probably you have to be the more generalist type of person if you want to build your own startup, because there are lots of things you have to do which you perhaps not thought about. And in a big company you might have someone else who does it on your behalf, and you can concentrate on one particular aspect of it. That's probably the difference. Then I think you can learn in both cases. You can learn by doing your own startup, but you can also learn very well in a big industrial environment, because you get to know many other people, experts in different fields, and a startup is usually more limited in terms of number of people. But this is why also for startups we provide this contact possibilities, this long night of science and so on, so that you meet with others and do not only stay to your friends where you have knowledge already about.
Thank you. We have some more questions. Are all courses for the master in English, or do I have to take German language courses as well?
You don't have to take a German language course, depending on the type of program you have. So we have mixed courses. We have parts of the courses in English and other parts of the courses in German, and we have seen that you can take the master if you are only fluent in English. Actually, we require all students, also the German students, to have a level of at least B2 according to the European grading scale in English. That's an entrance requirement we ask for all our master courses. Of course, it is advantages if you speak a little bit German, and that's not only for the courses, but that's also for the social life, for socializing with other students, for finding out about Berlin and finding out about the university and so on. That helps a lot if you speak a little bit of German. And of course, we support students in learning English and German and other languages by special courses we offer here on the university.
Therefore, just have a short German course. Hallo is hello, and how are you is in German, wie geht es dir? Therefore, that's for social life, and then maybe, what are we going to do? Was möchtet ihr tun? That's everything for the short German course. We have some more questions. Is there any age limitation to apply to TU Berlin?
Not that I know, no. I don't think so.
And another question, what are the common or expected challenges for the Internet of Things and human-computer interaction?
Oh, that probably would make up at least 1 hour of extra MOOC we have to do then. There's so many.
You have 10 minutes.
I only have 10 minutes, okay. But the Internet of Things is something which I would see in the context of switching from a user interface perspective, that what we have seen also in the app development now, to a human environment interaction perspective. So you have lots of things which may be interconnected, which may provide certain functionality. And this, of course, has lots of opportunities in the sense that you can create completely new ways of interaction. You've seen some of them in the video, in the entrance video, which showed what we are doing at TU Berlin. So you can think of brain-computer interfaces and that stuff. But you also can control devices in your smart home. But of course, that also carries risks, because if you have all these devices which are equipped with sensors, this might be a problem for your privacy, because not only you, but also a potential thief might find out when you are at home and what you are actually doing, and whether you are sleeping or not, and things like that. So this is something which you probably don't want. So we also teach people to cope with the limitations and the threats of the Internet of Things, in terms of having seminars on privacy, on usable security, and things like that.
We have another question. Does the TU Berlin do much work with many other international universities? Do you know something about that?
Of course, there are lots of offers because I think that's a requirement for each university which is visible on an international level. But TU Berlin particularly has lots of links, and this is also why we have a large number of students from foreign countries studying at TU Berlin. I think it's between 18 or 19% of our students are actually foreigners. We have particularly tailored networks, which you see, for example, in this European Institute of Innovation and Technology, this joint programs I've described to you. There are other joint programs where you get joint degrees or double degrees, meaning degrees from 2 different or even 3 different universities. There are projects in terms of strategic partnerships, which are built around certain topics, for example, energy and so on. And then there are the small scale exchange, which you might experience as a student in terms of Erasmus programs, that you spend half of a year at another university, either for doing an internship or for doing some courses there, for writing up your thesis there or something like that. There are organizations which support you in this. The university has a special Akademisches Auslandsamt, a foreign office, which supports students to go abroad, but which also caters for students coming from abroad.
Thank you very much. So a lot of chances to cooperate or to go in abroad and to come to Germany. Professor Möller, let's create a German engineer of the TU9 network. Just give us one skill. So we have 9 weeks, 9 live sessions, and what I want from you is that you give us a special skill that a German engineer gets after or being a graduate at the TU9 at the TU Berlin.
But if he is a student in the digital media and human-computer interaction course of studies, then I would expect that person to have a particular skill of interdisciplinary work. I would ask the student to have experienced and have worked in teams which are composed of people coming from different disciplines. For example, in my courses, I have students, I've counted it this morning, I had students, I think, from 10 different disciplines. And I try to bring them together by asking them to do joint work, joint project work, group work, exercise work, and so on. So I think that a student graduating from TU Berlin, he would probably have a particular ability to do such interdisciplinary work. And that's something which doesn't come for free. I think it's something which you have to learn. You have to learn to accept that there are people who are thinking differently than you are thinking, and that this can be for the benefit of all, for you and for the people and for the engineering products you might want to develop. So I think this is a particular capacity which you learn, especially if you're working in this media and human-machine interaction context.
So then thank you very much. This is our first skill of the TU9 German engineer, interdisciplinary work as a special skill. And therefore, thank you very much to Berlin, or to Professor Dr. Möller from the TU Berlin. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you, and good luck for the course.
Thank you very much, and therefore we come nearer to the end, and therefore I want to give you some information what will happen afterwards. After maybe a couple of hours, you can see the live session again. We will record it, and then you can find them on YouTube. You can find it on on our website www.mooc.tu9.de, and there you will find the login. You need a password, you need a username to follow us, to find the forum where you can discuss the exercises of the week. As you have heard, the exercise 2 from Professor Möller, the answers are needed till Wednesday, and the other answers of Professor Brettel are needed till Sunday. And therefore, if you want to have a statement of accomplishment, you have to answer 5 of 18 exercises of the week, and then we will give you a statement of accomplishment. you can also try it. You don't have to lose anything. You don't lose anything. You just get new information, new ways of how to be an engineer in Germany. For handing in the answers, there's also a formula. You will find it also on our website. And yeah, I think that's it for today. But last but not least, please fill out our online survey that is open till Sunday, till the end of the week. And yeah, I will be pleased that you will do that. So therefore, that was our first live session of the MOOC at TU9. Next week we will have 2 new topics: models in civil engineering from cardiology to fishery, and the second part is digital engineering from advanced physical layer technologies and 5G to secure services. That's for today, and I will looking forward to seeing you next week on Monday, then on 2 p.m., not at 12 or at lunchtime, then 2 hours later at 2 p.m. till 3:30. Thank you very much for watching us and seeing you next week. Goodbye. Have a successful week.